Alright, so over the weekend, Bitcoin has gotten another move to the downside. We've come all the way back down to this local range low. And first, I'll talk about my positions I was in last video. Like I said, I was looking to de-risk those, and I did that. By the time we came up to take out this local high over here, I had basically moved my stop losses to ensure a break even, with one stop loss still being slightly below my entry and the other one being slightly above my entry. I only took a $3 loss on that when originally I was risking like 25 bucks. So that's close enough to call it a break even. If I had profited that much, I would have called it a break even too, so it evens out. And so now talking about this move to the downside, I was looking at this low for a potential long trade, and there's two reasons that I did not take one here. I am not in a long trade yet. I may consider one depending on what happens following this SFP. I may look to refine an entry where I'm not having my stop loss all the way down here, but I'll have it somewhere locally. But the two reasons I didn't take a trade here. Number one, this is a massive stop loss. Risk reward is pretty messed up. If you're entering on even the close of the candle, the risk reward up to some of these key levels is not great. Like I wasn't gonna shoot for a 2-to-1 all the way up to value very high. If it was a tighter SFP like it was last time, I might have considered it, but that was one reason. And another reason is that Market Cipher was looking a lot worse for long trades by the time we came down to this low, with momentum and money flow continuing to move lower and pretty aggressively as we got to move down here. Now, there are still technically divergences here. However, because we essentially voided the much better looking divergences that we saw previously, with momentum putting in this higher low, money flow putting in this higher low, and had already crossed into the green on the 1 hour time frame. By the time we had this last SFP, that was much better confirmations. But money flow and momentum moved lower than those points, and even if it is still technically a slight divergence, based on how we were taking out those previous higher lows and how aggressively Market Cipher was moving to the downside, I thought there was a good chance that we may just continue lower, and that ultimately money flow and momentum would continue moving down until we voided all divergences, basically. That's something that you see happen, often, is you will originally see, some like slight divergences forming as we take out a low. Maybe we get a bounce, but then price just continues moving down later and Market Cipher follows it. So, not every apparent divergence is going to confirm as a divergence. That is, something important to note. At this point, we did SFP the low. We do still have slight divergences on the 1 hour, the 2 hour, the 3 hour. There is still technically a momentum div here, but look at money flow moving aggressively to the downside, even getting close to, getting to this previous low back here, which was a pretty aggressive down move. That was when we took out the macro range low. So we are, approaching some pretty bearish levels in terms of money flow. And same story basically on the 4 hour. We still have some momentum divs. It hasn't printed a green dot yet, but it does look like there's, a decent chance at divs here. That is, if price continues rebounding. I think, we still can void these if we continue lower. Then we'll probably see Market Cipher continue lower. And money flow here is also putting in lower lows. So this has completely voided that slight money flow div that we had. It put in a lower low along with price. So yeah, it has fully voided those divs. And while we're at it, we'll take a look at the daily and the weekly. We'll do bottom-up analysis, I guess. A little backwards, but it's all good. So the yellow oscillator, or the VWAP, whatever you want to call it, was moving to the upside. It has since started to flatten out. Momentum continuing to move lower below the zero line. I still think there is potential for a trigger wave to print here. It would be better if we would make a higher low to this wave back here. But, there is still potential that this can turn around. Money flow is in the green at the moment. We do see the direction with the money flow. We still, had that direction with the momentum previous. Let's see if it can continue that. But as I click to the weekly, that does start to look a little less likely because we do have a red dot on the weekly time frame. And this is not a good time to have a red dot here because we only have 6 hours until the weekly candle closes and that red dot confirms. And let's see, we're not quite putting in a lower low with momentum yet. I think if we start to move lower than here, that does start to look a little extra bearish, I would say. At that point, we're continuing the downward movement with momentum. And, a lot of my bullishness was based on this green dot on the weekly. That has turned around pretty quickly. And, it can play that red dot, green dot game. Maybe we end up printing another green dot here pretty soon. But, at the moment, it's not looking good, especially with money flow also continuing to move lower. So before I get into what some of my plans are, let me just mention one more thing. So I've been watching this value area low of the range since all-time high. I think this is a very important range. I've been keeping track of how this has been moving, and it is continuing to move to the downside. I noticed that, number one, it had moved down the last time I checked it, so based on that, we technically did reject off of the value area low, and we can even check and see where it was at on that daily wick that hit it, because I want to know if we technically did hit it or not, and we actually did. So at least during the day where we got this wick up to hit that value area low, the value area low did move down from where it was. It was originally like a little bit higher than it, somewhere around there. But at least within that daily candle, it moved down. So technically we did reject right off the value area low on the daily time frame, and it has since moved down a little bit lower, so I want to make sure that I adjust that. And I have to say, if we now lose this range that we're trading in, if we start kind of falling back down below this wick of that SFP, or even like closing higher time frame candles down below that range, especially with how bearish the midterm time frames are looking at the moment, and now considering that we did technically reject off the value area low, that may be reason to think that we may move lower. And there are some significant supports below us that I will talk about, but also having a failed reclaim of the value area low, then back testing it for resistance, does make this low all the way down here, the actual range low, more of a target in my mind, and it makes me think that there's a higher probability that we work our way down there, at least going off of the value area rotation rules and the range rotation rules that I use. I think that makes this low a bit more probable. Doesn't mean that that has to be hit. I think we could see bullish signs at some other significant supports like this range low, and maybe that could give us enough steam to try and tackle the value area low again. But this is starting to look a lot more like a bearish retest of the value area low, and that is something important to consider. And also another thing that kind of gives confluence to that is the anchored VWAPs. So we also rejected off the anchored VWAP from this high, which was the high on other exchanges, not on Bybit. We front ran this wick on Bybit, but it's still a significant pull. We rejected from that. And then we went on to lose this green anchored VWAP, which is from that macro range low deviation. So we start falling down below that anchored VWAP. It is starting to look like, the bearish strength is overruling the bullish strength here. So now let me talk about the areas that I'm watching next. I, really have 3 areas of interest. And the first one is going to be this wick low, this low of the local range, which is coming in at approximately 57K. And we did front run an area of support down there. It's not one that I can really mention, but we did, come pretty close to a support level down there. And it does look like we do have potential for divergences on the lower time frames if we get a move back down there. Like on the 15-minute, momentum and money flow have gone to move to the upside. It will probably continue down a decent bit if we do work our way down there. We are pretty far away from that point now, but there is still potential that we continue this direction with momentum. Maybe we even continue the direction with money flow. That could still put in a higher low. So that is an idea. And, ideally, there's more of a local setup at this low to go along with it. That's what I always prefer. But if I see the divergences forming, and if we get a nice shallow wick of that low, not a massive wick like we had here, then, I may consider just taking it as an SFP trade. That is what I'm thinking about this low at the moment. But I do think it is, of the ideas that I'm planning, the most risky one. We've already SFP'd this low of the range a bunch of times. Who's to say it has to work again? I don't think it has to, but it is still a valid idea. But also, the bearishness on like the 1 hour through the 4 hour is making that more risky in my opinion. So unless it's like a super good setup here, then I'd probably take less risk on it than with these other ones. I might take like a 0.5% risk instead of a 1% risk. And the other 2 areas I'm watching, first off, this is an idea that I had in my last video, taking out this high again. Again, because we rejected off the value area low already, technically, I don't think we have to come back up here. Also, it does seem like we're trying to lose the range to the downside. Compared to my last video, things are looking more bearish now. Like, I think there was better reason to rotate back to the upside in my last video. This was a pretty bullish SFP, but because that has failed, I am less convinced that we will, eventually work our way up here, at least, in the short term, where this idea still makes sense. but it is still a very significant area. We did, front run this green anchored VWAP up here, which is from the buy bid high. Approximately, I pulled that on a different time frame, but yeah, that is also up there. And with this new Fibonacci pull down to this wick low, the 0.5 is also right around that value area low. So that's an idea for just in case we kind of get a bullish reversal of this range and work our way back up to that value area low. So now this long, which may trigger in the short term. I think if this idea fails right here, the next stop will probably be this range low, and there is a golden pocket right below it. It's pulled from this wick low down at 48.8 up to this most recent significant high, and there is also some other confluence in that area. Again, something that I'm not going to mention, but I think, an SFP this low with bullish confirmations, ideally divergences on market cipher, as well as other things to go along with it, could be the thing that kind of prevents us from reaching all the way down to this low. I think this is the most significant support. If we start to lose this, if this fails, then I think this becomes a lot more likely. And there may be other ideas below this point and above this point that I would consider, but, until we reach them, I'm not going to plan those out because I really have to see how price action looks by the time we either lose this area or lose this area, because that will determine how I look to trade it. So, for right now, I think these are the important levels and the ones that I have my eyes on. Alright, that does it for this video. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment. That helps to support the channel, and I appreciate it. And I will see you all in the next one.